Hi, I'm Jen, and you're listening to the Shadow Sanctuary, where I dig into the history of haunted locations to try and find a correlation between historical fact and paranormal experience. Is there a reason for the hauntings? Why does energy stay? Keep listening to find out more. Before we step into the darkness, a quick word from our sponsor. When you're chasing ghosts, uncovering haunted history, or exploring the unexplained, the last thing you need is an energy drink that leaves you crashing before the story even reaches its terrifying conclusion. That's where Dubby Energy comes in. Dubby is a clean energy drink created to keep you focused without the crash, the jitters, or that anxious feeling that so many other energy drinks leave behind. And what isn't in Dubby is just as important as what is. There's zero sugar, no maltodextrin fillers, no artificial colors or dyes, no secret formulas, no hidden ingredients, and it's completely gluten-free. Inside every serving, you'll find 150 milligrams of caffeine, along with vitamins, amino acids, and a nootropic to help keep your mind sharp when you're venturing into the unknown. Every flavor is custom created by Dubby, so you're tasting something you won't find anywhere else, and it's all proudly made right here in the USA. So, before we unlock another haunted location, before we listen for whispers in the dark, before we ask the questions we may not want answered, make sure you're powered by Dubby Energy. Visit dubby.gg and use my exclusive code Shadow Sanctuary at checkout to receive 10% off your entire order. That's dubby.gg and code Shadow Sanctuary for 10% off. Now, dim the lights, silence your phone, listen closely, because every shadow has a history, and every history has a ghost. West Bay Lake, Wisconsin, deep in the North Woods, far enough from anything that the nearest town barely counts as a town. In 1988, lightning strikes an empty, decaying mansion on the shore, and by morning, nothing is left but a stone foundation and two brick chimneys reaching up out of the ash like fingers. Locals will tell you the house didn't burn by accident. They'll tell you it burned because something inside it finally got what it wanted. Welcome back to the Shadow Sanctuary. Tonight we're heading into the deep woods of Vilas County to talk about Summerwind Mansion, bullet holes that shouldn't be there, a family that fell apart room by room, and a ghost that may have been looking for buried treasure for over 200 years. Summerwind didn't start out sinister. In the early 1900s, it was just a fishing lodge on the edge of West Bay Lake, the kind of place wealthy Chicagoans built to escape the city for a few weeks a year. In 1916, a businessman named Robert Patterson Lamont bought the property. Lamont wasn't just anybody. He'd go on to serve as U.S. Secretary of Commerce under President Herbert Hoover. He fell for the lodge's windows, its lake views, its quiet. He brought in Chicago architects to remodel it into a proper family estate. And by 1918, it had become a 20-room mansion overlooking the water. The Lamonts called it Lilac Hill. For a while, everything was fine, or at least that's what the family wanted people to believe. The household staff apparently felt differently almost from the start. Strange noises, unexplained smells, and that particular kind of unease that doesn't have a name, but that everybody in an old house eventually recognizes. Mrs. Lamont reportedly heard the complaints for years and dismissed them. Then came the night everything changed. The story goes that Robert Lamont was in the house. Some versions say the kitchen, others the dining room, during dinner, when he came face to face with a full-bodied apparition. Whatever he saw, it frightened him badly enough that he did something almost nobody does when they see a ghost. He pulled out his pistol and he fired at it. The bullets, according to legend, passed straight through the figure and buried themselves in the wall or the door. Bullet holes that were still reportedly visible for decades, right up until the house burned down in 1988. The Lamonts didn't stay much longer after that. After the Lamonts, Summerwind passed through a string of owners. None of them stayed. Some accounts say prospective buyers would walk through the house, feel something they couldn't explain, and simply leave without making an offer. Eventually, the mansion sat empty for years, slowly rotting away on the shore of a lake most people only pass on their way to somewhere else. Then, in the early 1970s, a family named Hinshaw moved in. Arnold, his wife Ginger, and their children. Ginger's father, a man named Raymond Bober, was the one who gave the old Lamont mansion the name we still use today. He called it Summerwind. And Bober's account, published years later, turned this from a regional ghost story into one of the most famous hauntings in America. According to Bobber, things went wrong almost immediately. Voices in empty rooms, doors that opened and closed on their own, and strangest of all, rooms that seemed to change. Bobber claimed that hallways and rooms he tried to renovate would shift, subtly, between visits, as if the house itself was arranging its own floor plan to keep him disoriented. For Arnold and Ginger, the pressure built for months. They stopped sleeping through the night. Every closed door became a question mark. The stress of living inside a house that seemed to be actively working against them eventually became too much, and it reportedly took a serious toll on both of them. The Hinshaws didn't last long at Summerwind after that. There's also a darker thread to the legend. Accounts describing human remains discovered somewhere within the house's walls during this period. Never fully explained, never officially resolved. Like a lot of Summerwind's story, it's impossible to verify, but it's part of why the legend refuses to die quietly. Here's where Summerwind's story gets genuinely strange. Because Raymond Bobber didn't just believe the house was haunted, he believed he knew by whom. Jonathan Carver was a real historical figure, an 18th century explorer who in the 1760s claimed he had been granted an enormous tract of land in the region by local native leaders in gratitude for his travels and diplomacy. The grant, real or not, was never honored. Carver died in London in 1780, poor and largely forgotten, still fighting to have his claim recognized. Bobber became convinced that Carver's spirit had never stopped looking for that lost land, and that after 2 centuries, he'd found his way to Summerwind, built almost on top of the territory he'd once claimed. Bobber published his account under the pen name Wolfgang von Bobber in a book called The Carver Effect, and the story caught fire, literally, some might say, a few years later. Whether you buy the Carver connection or not, it gave Summerwind something most haunted houses don't have, a ghost with a motive. Not a random spirit, not a curse. A very old man still looking for what was promised to him. By the mid-1980s, Summerwind was abandoned, decaying and increasingly a magnet for vandals and thieves, looking to strip the old estate for parts. Local officials were actually discussing demolishing it. They never got the chance. On June 19, 1988, a storm rolled over the West Bay Lake. A bolt of lightning struck the mansion directly. Neighbors woke to the fire already spreading. By the time it burned out, Summerwind was gone, reduced to a stone foundation and a pair of brick chimneys, standing over the wreckage like grave markers. Some people call that a coincidence, a 100-year-old wooden structure struck by lightning in a thunderstorm. That's not exactly rare. But ask anyone who grew up on the local legends, and they'll tell you the timing feels like something else. Like the house, or whatever was in it, decided it was finally done. Today, the site sits on private property, monitored, and closed to the public, though a local paranormal group runs occasional supervised visits for those determined enough to make the trip. There's been talk over the years of rebuilding Summerwind as a bed and breakfast, embracing its reputation instead of running from it. Nothing has come of it yet. What's left is mostly silence, a foundation, 2 chimneys, and a lake that doesn't care either way. And a story that's outlasted the house itself by nearly 40 years, about a Secretary of Commerce who shot at something that wasn't there, a family that came apart room by room, and an explorer who's supposedly still walking the woods, still looking for land that was never really his. That's Summerwind, gunfire at a dinner table, a house that rearranged itself, and a 200-year-old ghost with unfinished business. Thanks for listening to The Shadow Sanctuary. If you want more of this, deeper dives, extended cuts, cases we don't cover here, I've got exclusive episodes over on Patreon for anyone who wants to dig further into the dark corners with me. Until next time, keep the lights on. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to check us out on Facebook for more information on upcoming episodes. As always, don't let the eerie vibes fade too quickly. Stay haunted, my friends.